A spring day in downtown Stamford. Perhaps a reluctant spring, as it's shown up late, but the promise remains. Just as a park which was once thought of to be abandoned, hopeless, has been developed in the last 5 years. A group of dreamers, visionaries, formed the Mill River Park Initiative. We will talk to some of them and about an innovative program called STEMfest. STEM standing for science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and how they are being used in the Stanford school system to excite children's knowledge and their thirst for knowledge.
So the whole idea of STEMfest grew out of an experience that Carrie Chiappetta, our director for school improvement and professional development, she was invited to an international math conference in Ireland, and as part of that, she got to tour the country looking at Maths Week, which is Mathematics Week, and she visited all different kinds of schools and public events all around math activities, and she was so excited about what she saw there and the opportunities for enthusiasm around math that the whole event, the Maths Week, presented. She decided she would see if she could bring a similar kind of event here to Stanford. So she walked into the superintendent's office and said, I've got this great idea, I saw this wonderful thing, and the superintendent said, great, make it happen.
The president has reminded all of us that there are wonderful opportunities, not only the fun of knowing about STEM, but also the opportunity for financial rewards and for careers in the future in science and technology, engineering, and math. As a matter of fact, there's over 100,000 jobs that are available in this country for students who have a good, strong background in these areas. So Stanford, as usual, is on the cutting edge of making sure that our students and community in this second annual STEMfest become more and more aware of all of the ways science touches our lives and the importance of knowing about and being aware of knowledge of how we protect the environment and improve the quality of life for all of us and generations to come.
Why is STEMfest and Mill River Park such a natural fit?
Well, at Mill River Park, we see ourselves as a living laboratory for the city and the surrounding areas to really learn about a river ecosystem, an urban forest, meadows, and nature in the heart of the city. So when we had the opportunity to host STEMfest in the park, we saw this as a great opportunity to connect people with nature. So the idea for creating Mill River Park in the heart of Stanford goes back to the late 1800s, and most recently, as recently as 1929, there was the Swan Report and this idea about creating a downtown park for Stanford. So we had a very successful project with the Army Corps of Engineers that removed the dams and that regraded the riverbanks so that it looked more like how the river looks in its more northern reaches when it's the Ripplewam. And then we created a green border along the banks of the river. If you look at rivers in nature, they usually have plant material that comes right up to them, and that helps when the river swells absorb that water so that you don't see certain levels of flooding. Eventually, the project will connect Long Island Sound, because it's a tidal river that flows into Long Island Sound, with Scalzi Park.
So we know that the Mill River leads out to Long Island Sound. It has a great history for fishing. Some of the life forms of the Sound were shown to us when we paid a call to the Bruce Museum in Greenwich. Peter Linderoth, who will be a presenter at the STEMfest, showed us some of the exotic aquatic life.
The organism I'm holding now is called the channeled whelk. Channeled whelk is a large gastropod in Long Island Sound. Different than our bivalves, gastropods have one shell, or no shells in the case of a slug. It's actually related to slugs. But in Long Island Sound, marine gastropods have shells. They would be channeled whelks, the snails that you can find on the beach as well. and other snails and organisms like that. There's actually some sea hares in Long Island Sound as well that are they don't have shells, but they're gastropods. But we're going to talk about the channeled whelk. Channeled whelk is a large predatory snail. Two characteristics that you can only find in the mollusk phylum are mantles. Mantle is a structure inside of shell-bearing mollusks that basically creates the shell. The shell grows with these animals. Another structure that you only find in mollusks is the radula, which is basically if you want to think of it in this term, a tongue with teeth on it. And this guy has a radula, has a rather large radula, which he'll use to eat bivalves and other prey. But another thing they actually do is they'll position themselves. You can't see it now. If his body was out right now, it would be covering my whole hand, a big goopy body. He's not doing it right now. He's tucked up because he's probably scared. It's scared, thinking maybe I'm a predator. But what they do is they use that really strong body and they'll position themselves next to a bivalve and they'll use an edge of their shell to chip into the bivalve and then they'll eat them. Really quick though, I'd like to talk a little bit about just the general anatomy of this sea star, which is the Forbes sea star. This is what you'll find in Long Island Sound. The Forbes sea star has 5 arms. And in fact, all sea stars tend to have 5, 10, 15, multiples of 5 when you start counting their arms. Another thing I should mention is they have radial symmetry. All echinoderms have radial symmetry. I have bilateral symmetry, which means if you were to cut a line from the top of my head down through my feet, both sides would about be the same. Radial symmetry means you can cut multiple lines through a central portion of the animal and it's all going to be symmetrical. In this case, around the central disc of the sea star. Now, as I mentioned, the sea star has 5 arms. This little orange dot right here is called a madreporite. Incredibly important for this animal to survive. It brings water into its body for that water vascular system. As I mentioned, there's oxygen in the water that this animal needs to get for respiration. That water vascular system also controls, if you get close on here, you may be able to see them, hundreds, if not 1,000 in the large case, tube feet, which are these little tiny suction cups basically on the bottom of the sea star. You can see them right here moving around. And here, which allow this animal to move. They move using these tube feet. And one of their favorite prey would be, we could say, a clam or a mussel. Once they find prey, though, they pick up on chemicals, by the way, that this clam would be putting into the water, not on purpose, but the sea star is just able to pick up on these chemicals. They find a clam, and this one's actually showing us a little bit what they do. They cover the bivalve with all of their arms, using those tube feet to get good hold, and where the two valves meet, they start working that little space with their tube feet. And what they do is eventually they'll open up the clam or mussel or oyster just a little tiny bit. We're talking almost microscopic here. And they're able to take one of their stomachs. Sea stars have 2 stomachs. They have a cardiac stomach and a pyloric stomach. They take their cardiac stomach and they actually are able to basically spit it up into this bivalve, still attached to their body, and start digesting the food inside while the clam is still alive.
We just spoke about chemicals and attractions. At Stamford High School, there is the ALTA program, Aspiring Leadership Through Action, which reaches out to Hispanic students with learning and enrichment programs. We looked in on a session as the students were learning about static electricity. If you take an enthusiastic and passionate science teacher, students who enjoy learning, put them in a room, turn out the lights, sparks will fly.
They knew it from their studies what static electricity is, but today they had some hands-on activities. And when the students do something by themselves, and if it is an activity that they can really take part on their own and do the things that they would like to do, that makes them learn. And I think that is what we are trying to accomplish today.
It is a support system for college-bound students. We offer at different grade levels homework support. We offer help if they have need to do anything on the computer. We have a computer lab available.
There is probably no other field where science, technology, engineering, and math come together more than the world of health and medicine. In recent decades, new machinery and technologies have been developed, refined, and ever evolving. Things such as CAT scans, MRIs, new ways to diagnose, treat, and cure whatever ails us and causes illness. And more developments happen every day. John Garber is a vice president of image analysis.
The researchers, and you realize how much there is yet to learn about the human body and how it works and how we can fix it when it goes wrong, or how we even know if it's going wrong at all. And so it's an amazing field, and I think no amount of technological improvement is going to make it a less interesting field in anybody's lifetime.
The Stanford Arboretum is a natural for STEMfest, joining over 50 groups or companies expected to present at this year's event. Todd DuPont, who's the director of Children's Ed, tells us about how composting plays a pivotal role in our lives and how to teach and reach children.
So for STEMfest, what we like to do at the Arboretum is we like to focus on soils, decomposition, composting, decomposers, things like that, because it brings together a couple of very sort of fun and interesting hands-on topics for children. That includes red wiggler worms, which is in the big green bin over here. Also looking at Madagascar hissing cockroaches, which are a rainforest decomposer. And also at STEMfest, we do a planting activity as well. So, it's one of those things where soils and decomposition is pretty basic. It's sort of nature's way of recycling itself, but very important to the health of forests. Healthy soil is really important to plants, which is what we do here. So we like to get children and students excited and interested about that, at an early age. So that's what we did last year at STEMfest. It was a really big hit, so we were asked to come back again this year and do it.
Getting word out is a job in itself. Using social media and other platforms to spread the message about STEMfest has been taken to new levels by Alex Vervo, who also runs an enterprise called kidsdrawfree.com.
So the act of drawing is basically putting ideas on paper, and there's a lot of inspiration for great ideas during that day because people will see experiments, they'll see ideas, they'll see innovations, and what we hope will happen is as kids process that information, they'll want to either talk about it or draw about it. And obviously, a lot of what they see is going to impact them in their lives, especially young kids. And we see drawing just being a creative outlet, a way to express what they've learned. And so we're going to try and make drawing a very fun activity. We're going to ask kids to actually go to different tables, experience experiments, and come back and draw something that inspired them. And some of those drawings are really, might be the precursors to what these kids end up being,
All the elements of sports can play into science, technology, engineering, and math these days. We have all seen this in terms of equipment used in a particular sport, to training methods and techniques. Also, new forms of communications have developed to bridge between experienced and new players. Greg Burton is the CEO of UB Sports, one of those communication portals for athletes and newbies.
UB Sports is a website that takes care of all the online activities that are relevant to any particular sport. We have 100 sports that we're building. There are 180 million people in the United States who play sports, and probably 3/4 of the people in the United States deal with sports through their kids as well. Either they're playing when they are kids, or as they grow up, then they have kids, and then their kids are involved. So the parents have other responsibilities, they have coaching responsibilities, and they have the wellness and health of the athletes, and injury prevention and injury recovery, which is really not their, they weren't trained to do that. So it really is incumbent upon sites and people to help the kids get better and stay healthy.
They say necessity is the mother of all inventions. Can't vouch for this particular time, but there is a walk-up in downtown Stamford where someone with an invention and a dream can use computers to get it perfected. On this night, Dan was working with Rippawam Labs founder John Robert to build a battery-powered car. We had a chance to watch and see the result.
You got something, bro. Look at you! Look at you! Yeah, so we offer classes and education opportunities not offered anywhere else in the area. I mean, you can't go to Norwalk Tech and learn about microcontrollers. You know, you can't go to Fairfield U to learn about, learning microcontrollers with robotics. You know, so we had to create our own educational opportunities. We literally begged the educators in the area to offer these classes, and they wouldn't. So we did it ourselves, and this space right here is a place where we do all our learning. Yeah, we got a bunch of things we want to bring over. I want to hopefully this is done by then. I'm sure it will be. We've refurbished this electric wheelchair that someone's thrown out, so we're gonna have that for kids to play on. We're gonna have a lock picking course for the students. Yeah, it's very learnable, and that's loads of fun. I'm telling you. And if you ever tried it, it's really kind of easy.
I have to say, if I tried picking locks, I would be caught.
Well, this is legal.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That was a small car they were working on. But let's rev up our engines as we meet another presenter at STEMfest. Let's meet a drag racer. Sarah Edwards has been working on this passion of hers for years. She is an up-and-coming player on the National Hot Rod Racing Association circuit. Known as Queen Bee, Edwards is a product of the Stanford school system and, even better, is an NCC graduate. We had a chance to go into her garage and meet her and her rig.
Drive a dragster. It's 24 feet long, just about 1,100 horsepower. It covers the quarter mile in 7.5 seconds at 180 miles an hour. And it will pull you with about a G when you're going.
We normally don't think of drag racing as something young ladies get into. How did you take to this?
Actually, I was in middle school when my parents took me to my first race, and it was just a family fun outing that we decided to go to. And while we were there at the Night of Thrills at Englishtown in New Jersey, I saw Jessie Harris, a dragster driver, and she went 300 miles an hour, and I just thought it was the neatest thing. And from then on, I was completely hooked on the track, on the sport, and the whole concept of racing.
NHRA kind of had a different vision than to get rid of it.
NHRA's motive was to get that street racing, outlaw racing off of the streets and brought to a safer environment where you are paired up 2 at a time, 1 in the left lane, 1 in the right lane, and you are traveling at dangerous speeds, where if you were on the street you would have other variables such as potholes, possibly animals running at other cars, and their whole mission was to make racing fun and safe, and that's why in 1951, Wally Parks decided to, create the National Hot Rod Association.
How do you go about maintaining the car and the engine during the off season, or even in between races?
Right. In between races, what has to be done is the oil is changed. It's kind of just a general maintenance, nothing major. Tires don't need to be changed. The motor doesn't need to be ripped apart after every run. In my class, in some other classes, there are every class has a different maintenance schedule. So for mine, like I said, it's just the general oil changes, checking the tire pressures, which we do that constantly, even throughout a race. And then in the off season, what happens is the car, as you can see, gets stripped down to its bare bones, and we just kind of go through it piece by piece and make a list of things we may want to add, things we may want to, that didn't work well for us that we tried in the previous season, and that's when we make those major adjustments.
what is it like adrenaline-wise
It's
when
a
you get
huge adrenaline rush. I think that's what really keeps you interested in the sport and excited and geared up to go. It's the whole adrenaline of getting suited up even though it's 100 degrees out and you have a helmet, a head sock, fireproof socks, a fireproof suit on, and you're climbing into what some think is a tiny little cage and strapping yourself in with a 5-point harness and arm restraints. It's that adrenaline of just being in the zone and in the atmosphere, and you just want to go. Your car is gonna take you back, and that's my favorite part of the whole racing. I love sitting in my car waiting for the lights to count down and knowing that I'm going to go from standing completely still to just being launched. And that is, to me, my adrenaline. That's what I love and, really enjoy in the sport. At one point, we tried to even change our launch to kind of make it a little bit softer and, easier on the rear end and everything. And I told my crew that I was like, nope, I like to feel the launch. I like to be thrown back in my seat. So they had to change it back for me.
In the Mill River, a basketball seems to be dancing, perhaps ecstatic over the Yukon women's basketball fortunes, but more so because it can float in a river that would not flow only a few short years ago. A new program designed to engage kids goes for an encore in the park on a Saturday in May. Last year, this experimental endeavor drew over 1,500 people. We only gave you a sampling, but if this is just a tiny taste, think of the depth and breadth of this to come. The future will be on display in Mill River Park on Saturday, May 16th. My thanks to all who cooperated with this presentation. I'm Nat Samberg.